Welcome everyone to this Tech and Tell webinar. And our presenter today is Penny Pearson, and she is from the Outreach Technical Assistant Network known as OTAN. And they are located in Sacramento, California as part of the Sacramento County Office of Education. And they have been around for 30 years. I think I'm going to let Penny correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 30 or 25 years. She can put that in the chat pod. So they are a statewide professional development project, and they work closely with the California Department of Education, just like Train PD does with Texas Workforce Commission. And my name is Anne-Marie Molinari, and I do work for Train PD at TCAL, and I'm a professional development specialist. Joining me today are Krista Mosier, who is my co-host. She's going to help keep me in line today. And then also we have Ashley Winkle, who is going to be providing tech support and also helping me with anything that I miss. So at this time, I am very excited to introduce our presenter today, Penny Pearson, who does work for OTAN as a coordinator for distance learning projects. And I do want to say a few words about Penny before we get started. So I'm going to spend a few minutes because this presenter today is amazing. Penny is a coordinator for distance learning projects at OTAN, supporting professional development projects to help adult educators integrate technology into day-to-day classroom practices, as well as help teachers gain necessary skills for effective online teaching. Prior to coming to OTAN, she was a teacher, a career technical education teacher. For 12 years, she taught computer skills, office productivity, digital photography, and storytelling. She has presented nationally on many topics in adult education and literacy. She has a bachelor's degree in communication studies. I have a bachelor's in communication studies as well, which I think is awesome, and a master's in instructional communication from California State University, Sacramento. She is an open educational resources expert, has done presentations nationally, and also an accessibility ambassador. On a personal note, I do want to share with you all, it is not every day that you can introduce a Tech and Tell presenter that you have known for 20 years. We first worked together at a wonderful school called Winterstein Adult Center in Sacramento, which sadly is now closed. And she gave me my first opportunity to work for OTAN as a PD consultant in California. She is a pioneer in adult education and literacy, and always strives to bring innovative, cutting-edge technologies to our field. She is a respected colleague, mentor, and a cherished friend. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop share now that I know what she's going to say, that I've embarrassed her terribly. Welcome, Penny, and you have the floor.
Oh my goodness, you are something else. Yes. And you know, I think we have to up that number a little bit. I think it's actually a little more than 20 years now. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I want to show you something real quick because I think this is a really cool tool, because this is at the beginning, and I'm doing this as I talk to Anne-Marie just to show you this new feature, relatively new feature in PowerPoint. And if you can see this, you should be seeing automatic captioning at the bottom of the screen. So if you can give me a little reaction, thumbs up there that you can actually see it, or celebration or something. I just find this very useful in our current environment with our teaching remotely nowadays, that this is a really nice way that you can ensure that your learners that may have auditory issues or just simply, or maybe they're English language learners, it's a way for them to be able to follow along quickly and with you. So Anne-Marie asked me not to keep these on for the whole time, so I'm going to stop sharing to turn it off, because they have other tools that they use for accessibility. So hang on just a second while I take care of that. okay, I can't say anything more because Anne Marie just said it all. But yes, I have been an advocate for open educational resources and accessibility for quite some time. And I am very proud to be a part of that family because it is something I feel is really important. So hopefully we're all in the right spot to do the things we want to do today. So let me advance my slide here, because a lot of times I get this question, it's like, why? Basically because there's a lot of people that need some help. And part of that is these stats that you see on this screen. To answer the question why, we have the World Health Organization reporting over 1 billion people live with a disability. Over 360 million of them with a hearing disability. And the list goes on. And in the United States, we've got folks that are 61 million of our residents have some form of disability. And that's equates to about 1 in 4. And that's always a shocker, especially in adult education, because we don't always catch that or see that, and we have to kind of have those tools available to help our learners. And Texas is no different. So we're going to take a look in a minute here about some of these additional statistics. And by the way, at that title slide, let me go back here real quick, because does everybody know what ALLY is? A-L-L-Y? Has anybody heard that before? You can pop it in the chat. This is called a numerum. And it's because the word accessibility is so long. So what a numerum does is it takes the first letter of the word, and then it puts the number of characters of the word, and then the ending letter. So ALLY, A-L-L-Y, is a shortcut for the word accessibility. So that's what we're here about. So the numerum is kind of like one of those trivia questions. So if you see this ALLY, A-L-L-Y, you'll know that the person is talking about accessibility. So that's just kind of a little trivia question there. So we have our statistics here, and we also need to talk a little bit about how Texas stacks up in this. You got folks that need some help. And I will have these, I'll go and show the big screen here in just a minute on these stats. But, you have to be aware that, you're not alone. Unfortunately, the southern states are the ones that have the most issues with disability. And I'll show you this by going to my little goodies here. Hold on, I got to switch around. So this is an infographic about disability impacts all of us. So this is where I'm getting these statistics. And Anne Marie will be posting this infographic in a folder on your portal. So she can guide you to that later this afternoon. So you make sure that you have access to it. But this is a really nice way to show folks this is not an issue to ignore. So you'll see here that it tells us, that a lot of the highest percentage of folks with disabilities live in the South, and you'll notice Texas is in that picture. And then it gives us some rundowns of the different types of disabilities, from mobility, cognition, independent living, hearing, vision, and self-care. So this is a overarching view of the United States, and there's also an infographic that will provide you about Texas. And I think this is really important because we all need to have a general idea of who our learners are. And I think this is a nice way to understand, some of the costs that are incurred through providing assistance and helping folks with disabilities, but also how you stack up against the rest of the United States. And you'll see that, Texas is kind of above average in terms of the levels of the United States versus Texas. So this is something that, again, sometimes folks need a little nudge, a little convincing that we need to be very cautious and mindful about how we approach our instruction, and hopefully be able to provide assistance to help those learners with whatever assistance they may need. Okay, so I'm going to switch back over to the presentation because we're going to move on to the next little slide here. And this has to do with okay, the other reason why we do this is because it's the law, all right? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to go into all of the idiosyncrasies of the laws, but these are the areas that we really need to pay attention to, and that we've probably all heard it. Oh, it's about Section 508. Oh, it's American with Disabilities Act. Yes, you are absolutely right. Those are the two main pieces of legislation, and Anne Marie probably has some others that are very significant. So it's something that, you know, just be aware, and I think we all are. We just have to kind of take those extra steps to move forward. Now, the last item listed on this slide is something, it's not a law, but they're a set of guidelines, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. You'll hear it referred to as WCAG, okay? I don't know why we call it that, but that's what we call it. And it is a way for everyone to understand how how we are supposed to do these things that we're asking you to do. So it is how we see the world, right? It is the law, and now we have some guidelines to help us. So that's why we're going to spend some time here. I really want to help you learn how to fish. Does everybody know that old proverb, right? You teach someone how to fish, they eat forever, versus you give them a fish, they don't. That's what this is about today. So it is a way for us to build your tackle box, okay? That's kind of my situation in terms of understanding and helping you with some resources and materials to get you started. So in the chat pod, how many of you have either taken another class, or you've had somebody talk to you about accessibility, or is something that has happened to you that has made you more aware? Can you kind of just give a little short blurb in the chat about your experience? And while you do that, I'm going to turn my camera off, only because I'm out in the Booney Toolies working remotely, and sometimes my internet connection goes a little wonky, and as Anne Marie will tell me, you sound like you're talking underwater. So I'm going to turn it off while you make a little note in the chat pod for me about how you have come to know, learn, or not about accessibility.
Penny,
yeah.
Weather, let's give them a little bit of time. And
Sure.
then in the meantime, while we're waiting for things in the chat pod, can you go back to section 508 in a minute and just kind of explain what digital materials are, as far as what's covered under that versus the ADA, and what the ADA covers? Because I think that would be kind of information.
And I'll probably need your help, my dear, because I always tend to kind of, I won't say gloss over, because I just look at this as a very big picture. But you really have to kind of understand that the Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act was really about making sure that federal agencies had their information, their electronic information and their technology accessible, and information accessible to people with disabilities. Well, that was kind of only one side of the fence, right? And it was fine, but everybody else was really, not following along. And it really took an extra piece of legislation, and that was the American with Disabilities Act, that said no one can discriminate against someone that has a disability. Now, when we talk about electronic materials, anything that is digital, anything that's on the web, anything that you share as a Word file, all of those pieces, everything that we use every day falls under these requirements. And so one of the key pieces, and this is what really kind of brought it together for me, was that we are required as educators to provide an equivalent experience. I want you to think about that for a minute. If you are a teacher that really loves lots of audio and video, that's awesome. But we have to have tools in place that help our learners have the same experience. If they have a vision problem, what can you do to help them understand what's in that video? Why is it important to your instruction? Why are you showing a video that's aligned to your instruction? Because you're wanting learners to learn something. So what is that experience to allow a learner that might not be seeing those same things? So I hope that's a kind of a packaged way to look at it, because it's pretty much anything you do as an instructor you have to have a mindset of looking at, I need to make this material available for everyone, no matter what their particular situation may be. And that may mean, and this is always the kicker for teachers, is like, I might have to do this in a couple of different ways. And okay, it might be that the technology can help. For example, you have learners that have vision issues. Well, there's great tools built in to Microsoft and other technologies that allows learners to use screen readers if they don't want to try to read the small print, or better yet, they have magnifiers. So those words can be magnified on the screen. So go ahead, Anne-Marie.
I was just going to say, I think that's awesome. And you've got a lot of great comments in the chat pod. It seems to me that we have a special education community kind of joining us today. We got some special ed experience. Yes. So we appreciate you being here. Kay is actually teaching a class right now that has disabled adult students. So you all know how important it is. And the only thing I would add here to just kind of piggyback after what Penny is saying is that the Americans with Disabilities Act also plays in here to accessibility. And that's because the Americans with Disabilities Amendment Act protects all people who are attending public education. And there's different titles under the ADA, but the title that applies to us in our work is Title II. And that has to do with educational agencies. So this has become, and then we'll kind of close this slide, but I think it's really important to understand this, is that more and more educational institutions are coming under fire for not making materials accessible. So I think it's just, it's just important to keep in mind. And it's not just educational institutions. It is all. It's, all. And think of COVID right now and how many people are shopping online. What happens if people cannot access a website if they're disabled? So it kind of puts a different spin on it. So anyway, okay, Penny, I think we can
definitely
move on.
Does. No, and I think that's, for me, Anne-Marie, it's to me, it's also, I'd say it's the law, but it's morally a good thing to do, right? And we just have to kind of help each other move that mindset to understanding why it's important. And it's just, it is the right thing to do. And sometimes we may run up against folks that they're like, oh, no, that's too hard. And it's like, yes, it is hard. I agree. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. So I'm hoping, as I said here, I want to help you learn how to fish, okay? And in learning how to fish, I want to give you the tools that you need to be good fishermen, all right? And so that means building your tackle box here. So some of the things we're going to talk about today is a bit about planning. That's kind of that first little blank piece of paper there, because we need to make sure that we have a method and a means to approach our work when we want to make sure that our information is sound. And then we need a little checklist that can help us build that work that we're planning for, right? Because if we don't, then we end up getting really lost, all right? I don't know about you guys and checklists, but I'm one of those people, I like checklists, all right? And then finally, we're gonna get you some resources and training so you can teach yourself, because I can go through and I can show you things, but we all learn better when we have to do, right? We've known that. They've got great statistics that tell us that. So I want to give you these tools. And one of the first and foremost we're going to do is I'm going to pause here for a second, and I want you to study this slide. Don't have to say anything. I just want you to study it. And I want you to see if you can see what's going on here. This is a slide that we're going to kind of be referring to this in just a minute. What's going on here? Can somebody kind of summarize what they think is going on here? And I don't know, Anne-Marie, if folks can unmute and talk, or if you want everything in the chat, but I can see the chat. So if you want to post it there.
I'll let you know in the chat pod if someone has
Okay.
a burning desire to
Okay.
share and unmute. Just let us know, and you can do that. Ashley says accessibility options. What about everybody else? I know we have like 14 people on. So what else? What are you seeing in each one of those pictures? What is it describing? One person said same. Yeah, you see it. Oh.
So when you look at this, you know, so we have identified water, right? Right, closed captioning, right? We see that closed captioning here. I'll just kind of scribble over the top of it right here. What else are they doing? So on this little eyeball point here, we're offering different ways to read about water. So yeah, and so the video is showing one way with the captioning, right? We also have audio options here where they're providing an audio description or audio narration about what's going on. And over here, we've got them using Braille. So it's all the same thing, but providing it in different ways. So again, we're back to that piece about providing an equivalent experience. This is what this is showing. And unfortunately, we've got an organization that helps us in this process to find out that how that works. So let me make sure I get rid of all of my little scribbles here so I can erase everything, okay? And this is this little acronym that's up at the top called POUR. And I am going to play a little video here because I think it makes a very nice succinct overview, and then we're going to dive in a little deeper. So I'm going to go ahead and start playing this.
Welcome to Designing for Accessibility. Many of the authoring tools available include options for adding accessibility into the content creation workflow. And standards such as the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines provide guidance for how to do so. However, these guidelines often include technical language that can be confusing to even veteran developers. Fortunately, a set of simpler principles, as captured by the acronym POUR, provide a better starting point. POUR stands for Perceivable, Operable, Understandable, and Robust, 4 qualities that define an accessible user experience. Perceivable content is presented in a way that it can be accessed with more than one sense. This accounts for both the needs of people with disabilities and those who are accessing the content in less than optimal environmental conditions. One example is the inclusion of closed captions and transcripts for video content. This will make the video more accessible to people who are deaf and hard of hearing. It will also make it possible for anyone to enjoy the content in loud environments where it would otherwise be inaccessible, such as while commuting on a train or a bus. Operable content in digital materials can be operated with a variety of input methods, ranging from the mouse to the keyboard and even speech commands. It also means options for navigation are provided. If the content of a digital material is marked up correctly, screen reader users can use a keyboard shortcut to bring up a list of headings. Using these headings, they can skip to the desired section without the need to listen to an entire page. Understandable content in digital materials is presented in a logical and predictable way as the user navigates through its various sections, and supports for language, such as explanations of unfamiliar terms, are included or easily accessible. Robust digital materials are compatible across platforms and work well with a range of assistive technologies. Designing digital materials according to widely supported standards will make it more likely that these materials will continue to work as intended as new delivery technologies are adopted. The 4 POUR principles apply to both teacher-created and procure educational materials, whether they are commercially acquired or open educational resources. When selecting or purchasing digital materials and technologies, use the power of the market. Call on developers and publishers to add accessibility at the source. This will ensure accessibility is built in rather than bolted on after materials have shipped, and the process of retrofitting becomes more costly and difficult. The PALM initiative can help you with language you can include in your contracts. By addressing the need for accessibility at the source with developers and publishers, you will add your voice to a national movement that seeks greater equity in education. The National Center on Accessible Educational Materials at aem.cas.org is your go-to resource for technical assistance. Together, we can develop and use learning materials that address learner variability and provide better opportunities for learning to all.
So what'd you think about that in terms of a way to look at moving forward with accessibility? And we're going to talk more about this resource available through the American Accessible Education Materials, so we can provide some resources there for you in order to fulfill your desire to make sure that your information is correct. So I see somebody wrote it, and I saw that Linda, was it Linda or Anne-Marie, Designing Accessibility, the YouTube channels. There's lots of stuff out on YouTube. So if you like to learn that way, that we'll have lots of resources that you can use, and both Anne-Marie and I can plant some other items in the chat pod as well. So perceivable here I have up on the screen. You can see, you know, the basic concept is quite simple. Make sure learners can see and hear your content. Now, what that means, though, when you actually start building things, is that you need to add what's called alternative text to images and other visuals. And this is generally a place I find that teachers haven't had an opportunity to understand well because they haven't done it in the past. So there's tools and resources and software programs, and we're going to specifically be looking at Microsoft, that can help you to do this. If you're using video, whether you're creating it or whether you're using someone else's, you need to make sure that you have closed captions on those videos, like the one I just played had closed captions, but also there's also a transcript of that information as well. So someone that might need to use either a screen reader or something else, a different piece of technology, in order to be able to view those captions, or use a screen reader to have it read the transcript so they understand the materials that were presented. Provide sufficient color contrast between text and its background. This is one that is often overlooked only because teachers love color. We like to put color on a lot of things, and that's great, except for someone with low vision or someone who may have an issue with color blindness. So we need to be aware of a high contrast to make sure that your text is understandable and they can actually see what it is, where it is, and be able to read it if they're reading. And again, if they can't, then they can listen to it as a screen reader, or they can have a screen reader read the transcripts. And this last one is one that is sometimes difficult for some teachers because they rely on color to relay a form of meaning. I think where I've seen this the most is with teachers that teach English, and they use different colors to identify the different parts of speech, you know, the verbs, the adverbs, the nouns, etc. And that's fine for everyone who can see those colors, but if they can't, then we have a problem. So having some other way to convey that meaning other than just color is something that helps to make your materials more perceivable, right? Okay, remember, POUR: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So let me go over to this way to go on to our next slide. That is about operable. And I think this one is even more interesting now that we're in this situation with the pandemic, in that we have to have multiple ways for our learners to interact with content. And teachers are not programmers. You know, we just don't have that skill set often, but we can make sure that the materials that we do create have a very clear structure. I am one of those people that I've been using Microsoft Office for a really long time, and I will tell you that headings are your friend, okay? Just remember that. Headings are your friend. It will help you to understand how your document is organized, and it will help anyone who's using a screen reader to be able to navigate your text very easily. The next one about creating descriptive links that make sense out of context. This is something that can, I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to use a screen reader when there is, reference like, well, to see more about descriptive links, go to this website, and then it goes https // A screen reader reads every single one of those letters. But if you create a sentence that say you can learn more about creating accessible documents and provide accessible documents as the link, then the learner knows that learn about accessible documents will send them off to that link that is listed. So I hope that makes sense, right? I've listened to a couple of folks that were doing some testing on some online courses that I had created this was at the federal level, and I was on an online meeting like this, and I was listening to him check the content, and he had his screen reader. I kid you not, he was listening at 300 to 600 words a minute, and he understood what was going on, and he was navigating that website it was amazing. So those that use these assistive devices get very, very good at them, and then they also get very frustrated when they can't get to where they want to go quickly. So these operable options that are listed here are really important. The last two, providing sufficient time for interaction and response. This is more about that live element. If some folks are working with assistive devices, you have to give them time to actually interact the way that you want them to. And it may be a little bit longer than you would give the majority of your other students. So that's something that can be, I won't say it's frustrating or difficult, but it's something that we have to learn to do. I know when I was a first-time teacher, the old adage about that wait time, you ask a question. Does anybody have any questions? Well, no? Okay, that's not enough wait time, right? We have to give time for our learners to respond. And sometimes that means a little more time for those that are using assistive devices. This last one often trips up our teachers because they're like, what do you mean, content that can trigger seizures? Does anybody have an idea what this means?
Ashley says, flashy images, so true.
Mm-hmm. What do you think would be something that would why would flashy images be a problem for some people? This is important because we often don't know that our learners may have medical conditions that can trigger seizures. And typically the one that comes most to my mind is epilepsy. And those that are, it doesn't happen often. Yep. Migraines is another one. Yep. So I think we're seeing more and more of this, especially with us all being Zoomers, right? We're always on Zoom, this whole screen thing. There's some great tips that Anne-Marie, I'll forward on to you about health reasons around Zoom, because they're seeing some effects that may be problematic in the long run. And we just need to be aware to, every hour, stop, close your eyeballs, right? That's one.
Penny, yeah. Let's think about one other thing. We're talking about flashing, but what else? Because we want to remember that there's different types of disability. So people may have epilepsy, they may have migraines, but there are other student populations that are very sensitive to flashing, spinning, transitions that I call
yes.
like the hyper ones. What other types of students do you think, this is a question in the chat pod, do you think are going to be real sensitive to that? Because there's another group, as a former special ed teacher myself, I want to kind of just camp on this for just a minute. What other students do you think we are going to be sensitive to the flashing, the fast animations, sounds that we may incorporate? What other groups of students?
Well, I think that you see it in the chat as well. Our population that has ADHD and autism, they can respond very negatively with that. And as to others, I'm not sure if you're asking for specific conditions, Anne-Marie, but those are the ones that are the one to me that we have to be careful about. And
Those, exactly. That's what I was looking for. And
we don't.
also,
Oh, PTSD
yes,
is another good one. Yep.
yes,
Thank you,
yes, yep.
Tatiana.
And one other one, and this can be a variety. Students that have a cognitive disability, students that may be intellectually disabled or cognitively disabled, we also want to be very, very careful of that too. But autism comes to mind. Also, Down syndrome. They can be also sensitive to sounds, to fast movement, those types of things. So thank you, Penny, for letting me. Penny
Now,
said I could jump in every once.
absolutely. No, I have to credit this woman with ensuring that I had a better understanding of a lot of these pieces, because I have not worked in special education, and that group of teachers and that work with that population are so important. And I think right now we're having some real issues of getting our special ed populations at the K-12 as well as the adult ed level back to some semblance of an educational normal. And I don't see that stopping anytime soon. So appreciate that. And really, my dear, you can come in anytime. So not a problem. So as we move on through our POUR acronym, the next one after operable is understandable. Understanding the content and enjoy a predictable experience. And this one can be very challenging. And where I've seen this is, this first one is really important. Clarify your expectations. You need to have very clear directions, and you need to have a way to show your learners what you want. And for most teachers, they're like, I'm just gonna jot this out real fast, and here's the directions. I think one of the most telling things that I found very young in life, I had to do some kind of test. I don't remember what it was, but the teacher said, right up front, you must read all of the instructions before you begin the test. It was like a 10-minute test, and the directions were like 2 pages long, and I had 10 minutes, and yet I see this packet that's like 100 multiple choice questions. I don't know about you, but that caused a little anxiety. And I remember I was reading the instructions, and I thought, I can't do this. Yeah, it's just, okay, yeah, I get it. So I jumped in, and I'm trying to answer these questions. The timer went off, and I looked around me, and half of the learners there had never even opened the packet, because the teacher had put at the end of her instructions, oh, no need to do this. You've learned everything you need to learn. Just put down your pencil. The test is over. Now, yeah, it was a little bit of trickery, but it told me that those clarifying expectations through clear directions were really important. And your learners need to understand when you say read all of the directions that you really need it. And hopefully you're not making them 3 pages long, of course. And I think that for me, that was just one instance in my young life. I mean, I think I was probably in 6th or 7th grade, and I was like, whoa, I need to pay attention, and hopefully my teachers are doing a good job of clarifying their expectations. And when it says follow conventions to ensure a predictable and consistent experience, what this always has meant to me is that I always wanted to have kind of a roadmap for my learners that was predictable, understandable. They knew where I was going. They knew where I was going to end up. And that can take many forms. For me, it was to ensure that I started out with, in an online course, I would have an introductory reading of some kind, and I would follow that with a discussion forum with 2 or 3 guided questions to try to get my learners to think about that reading. And then I would ask for, a summary in their own words of how that particular reading impacted their life. And then I'd move on to some type of, quiz or project. But each of my modules kind of followed that same process. And it just made sure that my learners knew where I was always going. And using plain language, that's one that can really be interesting and difficult, especially for teachers that are in skills-based teaching, career tech ed. If I'm teaching welding, I need to make sure that my learners understand my language, and that means teaching them the vocabulary not only of the career, but also making sure that when I use plain language, it's been laid out what I'm talking about and why I'm talking about it. And indicate the language of your content. To me, this was very telling. And it was difficult because I do not speak another language. And I would often have learners in my class that their primary language was not English. And so at that time when I was teaching, translation services were limited and far between. Now we have these great technology tools that can be very helpful to teachers and students to translate content into a different language if necessary. But this primarily means that you are telling your learners, I am going to use this language all the time, okay? So we're going to go in and we're going to show you more of these. Let's go on from our understandable to, okay, I can't see my little buttons here. Last one is robust. And this one is very straightforward. It's really about, it's got to work with your technologies. I know in OTAN, we've just did a huge upgrade on our website. It is fully compliant with what's called the guidelines WCAG 2.1. 2.2 is coming out pretty soon, I'm told. So it's really important that you can test as best you can how your content works on a Surface device, on a tablet, on a phone, on a laptop, on a desktop computer. And that sometimes means you enlist your friends. It says that we're going to go in and take a look at this actually is working on these other items, and use some accessibility checkers. And we're going to go out to Microsoft and we'll show you where you can learn more about those. So let's move on here. I think we're okay with POUR. We have it, right? Everybody, can somebody tell me what the 4 means, right? What's POUR stand for?
Yep, let's guys, go ahead and don't look in the chat pod. see if you can remember what it stands for.
They're all scrolling. No.
I know they are all. I think they are. They're all scrolling.
They'll get it in there.
Okay.
I know they will. There we go. Thank you, Linda. Okay. So back at the screen here, and these links that I'm going to show you are in the PowerPoint, but I'm just going to kind of stay out on the web right now to show you these. First and foremost is the National Center on Accessible Educational Materials. This is one great go-to place just to learn about why we need to do this. And on this page, you'll see here on the left-hand side in their table of contents, they have, what are accessible technologies, who needs them, and why provide them. So again, this can be a great resource to just get your folks motivated and understand why we do this. The next section here I want to show you is the quick starts. Now the quick starts come to all different places. So you can send your parents here, you can take other teachers here, you can see information for higher education, and they're all listed here. So if you're due for workforce development training, there's some great resources. In clicking on that link will give you some quick start materials and information. Again, why are accessible materials, why are they important? And there's just a lot here, and we're not going to take the time to go through them all, but you'll have the links when you get the slide deck, and you can find those items that speak to your heart the most. Also, AEM also offers an online course. This doesn't cost anything. It's 4 modules, and it's a way to look at making everyday curriculum materials accessible. So this quick start section, the online course, each of the modules talk about here, you can see down at the bottom, Introduction to Accessible Educational Materials and Technologies. And this is one online course, right? Just, you know, about talking about, you know, making your documents accessible, how to locate caption videos. And I am going to provide you some other resources. I'll pull them up right now that come from different resources, but there's one called the Accessibility Toolkit. And this is based on POUR, and it has lots of resources here to help you with understanding each of those different parts of making your document accessible, why you want to do these things. This is in a Word document, and it's also an open educational resource, and that is licensed under Creative Commons. You'll see it down here at the bottom. So I left it in a Word version, so if someone wants to add particular information about their agency, what their rules are, this is something that can be very valuable. I'm also providing is PDFs. There is some documents that's from the National Center from Accessible Educational Materials that really are get started guides about document accessibility. So it talks about using styles, it talks about the links. These are all things that we just read about in the POUR model, right? And then they also have another one, a get started guide with starting with presentation accessibility. So these, I won't go over every single one of them, but these are things that I've provided to Anne Marie, and I know she's got a bunch of them already that can just help you with understanding, you know, how to get started, why am I doing this, where can I go, that kind of thing, to make sure that your materials are accessible when you create them.
Yep. And I'm going to jump in here for just a minute, and I'm going to let you know that at the end, Penny is going to allow us a few minutes. We're going to go out to the PD portal. I'm going to show you where these are going to be. And I've only put the one that she showed us. Let's go back to that Word document for a minute.
Oh, sure.
The Word document this one is already in there right now, and I've already checked accessibility, right? So that's why I'm going to check accessibility quickly on those other documents before we load them. But you'll be able to go to the Tech and Tell Community of Practice or the Adult Education and Literacy Community of Practice to find these materials. So just a heads up, but we're going to go out and make sure y'all know where to go to find them. Okay, thanks. Penny.
Okay. Sure, not a problem. So I'm going to go through here. We're going to talk about the other slides were just links to those same files that I just showed you. That's why I skipped over them. But I want you to understand that Microsoft is your accessibility friend, okay? I understand that this is your primary tool for creating materials. Is that correct? Is most of you using Microsoft Office 365? Because there is a ton of materials here that we can work with. The first and foremost, we're going to go out to this Accessibility Center, the resources for folks with disabilities. Again, this is Microsoft, so they're able to tell you what you can do in Microsoft. I'll zoom in on this a little bit, with all of their different tools. Now, you may or may not be using all of these tools, but you know, using Microsoft Teams, maybe you are. Using Teams, and they have an accessibility overview of how you can use it, and you can show your learners how to use the accessibility tools within Microsoft. They have down here getting started with accessibility features. So they have screen readers that you can get help with. They have some really great learning tools to help improve comprehension. Can you repeat the name and source of the 4-hour training mentioned? So there's the 4 modules that was over here from the Accessible Education Materials. So they have these modules that they created here for you to get
Penny,
through.
let's go back to the AIM website. We've got time. Let's go back and find where that is again, Karen. We're going to go back. So let's go to home. Let's go to AEM home.
Getting it to pop down. Here. There we go.
There we go. All right, so then where would they go? Because I actually forgot about those courses. Let's go where those courses are.
Let me see. I think they have it on the home page here. I think I've got it at the bottom. Digital Shift. Okay, so they have their events here. All right, hold on. I just had the link, Anne Marie, so I wonder if they moved it. This kind of happens.
I wonder if you
designing
go
with
to,
core.
I've
So
seen
you
it
see where I got my graphic, right? So this is from them. But I'm not seeing, let's see if we've got the courses here. See, I think they were in.
How about creating? Go to creating AEM on that tab right there.
So they've got the best practices, but I'm not sure that I ever saw an online course other than that one that was just the 4 modules that we were at just a moment ago.
I think that's what Karen wants, right? Karen, you want to go, I'm just trying to find it where to go so you can find it. Yeah, so
Right.
Karen, you want the 4 modules.
Yeah, so it was on, let me pull this up here. So it was under this AEM Basics, Accessible Educational Materials Basics, and down on the left-hand side in the table of contents is their online course. Now this one is all about making everyday curriculum materials accessible. So as you scroll through this, this is the introduction, and then they give you the topics, and the modules are just on this page. So if I click on module 1 here, so this is the foundation, right? It's going to give you the basics. It's talking about, what they're going to offer you. They can give you credit. And here I'm just scrolling down fast. So if I'm going too fast, tell me to slow down. So here they have, their information on a webinar, so you can watch their webinar recording. You can look at their handouts. You can see their slide deck. So this is the course, I think that was, oops, go back to the title again, okay? This was on the left-hand side under Accessible Educational Materials, online course, and it's the modules. So there's Introduction to AEM. On Module 2 is Accessible Documents. Module 3 is about how to locate caption videos and create your own. Module 4 is about finding specialized formats of print materials. This is especially valuable if you're doing a lot of remote teaching and you're needing to convert your content from like a print book, as long as it's not a publisher's book, right? And then Module 5, how to select digital accessible digital materials. This is more for me, this is for folks that are going to go out and actually try to find textbooks or content. So Karen, does that help you? Did you get where you needed to go here? Again, it's on that main About AEM online course, and I got to it quickly by going to the headings bar table of contents on the left-hand side.
And for those of you, I know Karen, you got it, but if those of you that are also on the webinar, you can copy the link from the chat pod and then put it in to your web browser by clicking paste, and then you can go to it and save it as a bookmark, okay? Or you should have the option to just hover your mouse over the link in the chat pod, and if you click on it, it's going to open up in a web browser for you. So I took it right to you, and Penny just put it in again.
Sorry.
That's the right to the online course that Karen was asking about. But Penny's also going to show you where you can take more free online courses through Microsoft. So we'll go back.
Right.
Okay.
So I just brought you to this page. This is kind of Microsoft's overarching get started with accessibility features in Office. You may or may not know what they have available. So this is just a great place to get started. If you need, accessible templates, they've got places to go and see what's available. Here's their training, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open this, but I'm going to take you to some other training paths. But if I open this in a new tab, then this will bring us up into their video training, and it's all about making things accessible. So create more accessible email messages, create accessible documents in Word, and I'll post this in the chat because this is direct to this page. And again, I got to it initially on the Office Accessibility Center resources for people with disabilities. So that's a great place to learn about what's available. And then we selected the training. So there's 3 lessons in making email messages more accessible. Did you know that technically in your workplace, all of your email messages are supposed to be accessible? So I don't know about you guys, but it takes me a while to get that done. And so, but technically that's supposed to happen. Most of us aren't doing that yet because it hasn't been brought to the forefront in many of our offices. So here's other resources and materials on this page, but these are some places about specific Microsoft products. But there's also, and I don't know, Anne-Marie, how much of your group is using the Office apps on a desktop or on a laptop versus Office 365 on the web.
And you know what, that's a good point. And I kind of want to just take a step back here for a minute. And remember this too, and we could have another 3 or 4 webinars just on this, but also think about what you're using to develop your materials. So
right,
Google Docs is a whole other topic, but yes. Thinking about, you can always start here. Microsoft has done a lot of work. And they have, that's why their resources are there's so much depth to the resources. So I'm not sure how many people are using, back to your question, Penny, who's using what. Some programs don't allow Google. Some programs and some teachers don't have Microsoft at home, so it just depends.
Right. And I know that in my organization, OTAN is housed within the Sacramento County Office of Education, and they purchase, at educational discount, Microsoft Office 365, Office 365. But within that purchase, employees are allowed a license that they can use at home, and it costs like $10. And so it is a great way to be able to have access to the same material, the same software to build content. And that's more of a question of your IT people or those that are, what are they using in the office? I'll just say office is the kind of the big overarching organization, because many times, especially with Microsoft Office, there are free versions, but as with all things that are free, we call them freemium, right? Because some parts are free and other parts, no, they want you to subscribe. So it's always worthwhile to ask those questions. If you have a dedicated technology or software person that you can talk to, they might be able to help you with understanding what is available to you as a teacher. Now, like with my license, I had to agree that when I left the Sacramento County Office of Education in my job, then I give up that license. So then I would have to purchase that license on my own, or a subscription to Office 365. So that, read the fine print, because there's things that, are likely a, control mechanism. So they're not just, giving away licenses all over the place. So again, we were on Microsoft, their accessibility video training. This is a great place to start. But then they also have a Microsoft 365. They have a bunch of learning paths. And on these paths, there are ways that you can even become certified in different parts of Microsoft. They've got the Microsoft Expert Instructor. They've got lots of other ways that you can get more and more knowledge. Now this, this is just the main page. I'm going to post this in the chat. And again, they'll all be on the slide deck, but you'll notice that some of them are tagged as beginner and intermediate and developer. And there's, some of these won't pertain to you per se, but it's a great way to understand what Microsoft offers. And we also have their Office 365 accessibility fundamentals page. And this is a about 2.5 hour module, well, it's multiple modules actually, about learning about accessibility in Microsoft Office. So they give you an introduction, And if you are going for your Microsoft certification in any way, you'll notice that they are assigned points here. And as you build your points, you earn badges as being a Microsoft Innovative Educator. And so they talk about what is accessibility, language and etiquette, what is inclusion, and you'll see that they have the times on each one of these. So you can come in and, I advise you to create an account so you can keep track of the points that you earn. And this is a way of learning about Microsoft's accessibility features, creating content that's accessible using Office 365. And I'm making a distinction here because Office 365 is all web-based. Everything is online. You use a browser, you get into Microsoft Word 365, you get into Microsoft Excel 365, which is different than the full applications, the software packages that you download to your device. Like I have, Word here up on my screen. If I pop this up, I've downloaded this application to my computer because I happen to like that there's more features in the desktop version or the application versus the online version. But that's because I've been working with Word for a long time. And there's things that I use that aren't necessarily easily accessible to me to get to in Office 365, or the feature isn't available. So this is a great way to get started, and it's only 2.5 hours. It doesn't take very long, but that's not all that there is. So if you're still working and new to Microsoft Office 365, there's all kinds of training on all of their products. So this I brought up the Microsoft 365 training, and you can get training on all of their applications, and they have lots of things about templates and quick start guides. So if you're brand new to like Excel or something like that, when you look at the quick starts, it's a really great way to just take a peek. Like I'll just choose Excel, right? And so now they're how to create it, how to save it, how to analyze it, how to collaborate, how to set up for mobile apps. And they also have, learn more. So there's little videos, and it'll walk you through these applications that you may or may not use very frequently. So again, this is just off of that Office site to help you with using these different applications. Now, the accessibility fundamentals goes hand in hand because it's meant to show you the tools that Microsoft has created to ensure that your materials that you create using those tools are fully accessible.
Penny,
yeah.
I just want to jump in for a minute. Can we go back out to where, because I think this would help everybody, and give me a yes or no. Would you guys like to go back to where the Disability Center is and how to find the courses again? Let me know, yes or no. I see a yes. I want to go back to the beginning to let them see how you got to the actual courses on accessibility.
Okay, that's always one of those things where I get off on little bunny trails and I don't always know exactly how I got there. So we can learn together because I find them, I search, and I do things like that as well. So I'm on the page, and then down here where I've got, create an inclusive workplace. Okay, well, this is about Teams. And if you're interested with Teams, you can go to their Learning Center, or you can get their accessibility overview. And as I scroll down the page, now I get started with accessibility features in Office. So I can go to that help homepage, but on this page here, we're talking about, using a screen reader, get accessibility help, learning of focusing tools for learning tools, making your content more accessible with the accessibility checker. So if I think this is where I clicked, Anne Marie, because again, I think I went off on bunny trails. When I load this up, make your content accessible. Now I have a nice little video. It talks about the accessibility checker here. And as I scroll down, they give me a lot of information about how the accessibility checker works in different environments. And as I scroll down, I think it's at the bottom here. There's just a lot. Getting around in Microsoft sometimes is interesting, to say the least. So at the bottom, we have the more resources, create more accessible documents in Word. So we also have, they have links here about learn about alternative text. Somebody asked about no Bitmojis in email. Well, yeah, you can actually. You just have to give them a good set of alternative text. Now, when I say that, does everybody know what I'm talking about when I say alternative text? And I'll wait for just a second.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah,
Okay.
Karen does not know. Yeah.
Okay. So in a document, let me see, I can actually go to my PowerPoint, I think. In order to provide that equivalent experience here, let me see if I can go forward. So I have an image here on this page. Now a screen reader comes along and, okay, the screen reader is going to say, okay, there's an image here, but they may not know exactly what it is. I mean, you looking at this, you're going, oh, well, it's a tackle box with, it's got fishing lures and fishing lines and fishing poles and all that kind of stuff. But a screen reader actually has to look at the kind of behind the curtain at how is this particular graphic image described. So I'm going to move my PowerPoint software program over to the screen. So let me escape out of here real quick. I'm going to just end this. Come on. No. So I'm going to bring over my PowerPoint. Can you see it? This is the editing side when I'm going to edit my document.
Yeah,
so,
we can see
okay.
this. Yeah, we can see this.
So I like using my mouse, so I'm a right-click queen. I like to right-click, whoops, not move, but right-click. And then I have this Edit Alt Text. This is what the screen readers read. They look for this, and your accessibility checker will say, okay, what is it that this is? And I say it's a picture showing, that's probably be better, right? Showing fishing gear, lures, line, and hooks. Now, if this has to me value in my instruction, because I'm talking about a tackle box, I'm talking about being able to move forward with working with accessibility. So I think this picture has value to my instruction. If it didn't, if it was meant as purely decorative, it was just to look pretty on the screen, you don't want to waste someone's time with the screen reader to just say, oh, this is a box with a fancy blue trim. Well, that doesn't have any value instructionally. So you can always mark your text as decorative. And that says that, okay, I've added something that's interesting visually, but people with screen readers, they really don't care. That's what I'm talking about, alt text. All of this comes from the tool within the Word products that is your accessibility checker. And it's up here on my ribbon of review, and it'll allow you to go through and check your document for accessibility. That's part of that POUR, right? You want to look at that perceivable and operable, etc. This helps you do that. And that's what Microsoft has done very well in allowing you to create materials that are fully accessible, because if it isn't, it will come along and it will tell you if something is wrong. And I know, Anne-Marie, you didn't want me to go through the accessibility checker, but they asked, so I wanted to show it.
No. I think that's good, and I just wasn't sure how much time we were going to have, but we're doing good on time. And I wanted to ask you all, let's go back to that picture again.
Okay.
Let's go back to that picture again where your tackle box. So here's a question in the chat pod for everybody. When we're thinking about this picture, this is a question for all of you. She included it. Why did she include the picture and not just make it decorative? That's number one. Why did she include it with alt text? And number two, what part of POUR is it really having to do with? Is it having to do with making it perceivable, understandable, operable, or robust? There's really two parts of POUR. So number one, why did she not mark it as decorative? And what part of POUR is important here with this picture? I couldn't pass this up.
It's funny that you say that, because I was like, and I used the same image, so on the two slides as well. So as you think about this, because I mean, Anne Marie has a very valid question. As instructors, we have to make decisions. And those decisions, in my mind, need to lend itself to your instruction. And I have worked with teachers that have told me that by doing things in an accessible format, you've just stripped me of all my creativity, which wounds me because that's not true, first of all, but secondarily is that as teachers, I think we need to be very focused on our teaching. Yes. Now I like that, Ashley. Now it makes you more creative. There are things and ways you can do things, and it takes time, and that's what this slide is all about. There's lots of other Microsoft resources on the previous slide, but I know we're running out of time. And you know, Anne Marie's question is very poignant, because you can't do this all at once, right? You have to take the time. You've got to do some planning. And I tell teachers, I said, don't worry about what you did yesterday. Okay, it's what you're doing tomorrow that matters. And now that you know what's going on, you can take those steps to work together. I really encourage this, and I don't know how feasible it is given the state of things right now. But if you are working in a curriculum area or a program area where you need to create some materials that you can all use, you should work in teams. You should start small. Find the thing that, you know, maybe it won't be so overwhelming to make accessible. Because that statement in that poor video before is so poignant. You want accessibility built in and not bolted on. And as creators, when you do this, you are building in that accessibility. You are building in those pieces that ensure that your materials can provide that equivalent experience for all of your learners.
Yeah, and I want to congratulate Tatiana for answering the question here. It's perceivable and it's also understandable. If I have a vision impairment, the reason that the picture needs to be included is that Penny uses the fishing and tackle box analogy several times in her presentation. So if I'm visually impaired, I'm not getting the same experience as everyone else because I can't see the picture and I can't experience it. So that's what Penny was saying about making the experience for everyone. So that's why pictures should be thoughtful when you incorporate pictures. Is it helping or is it hurting? Do they need to see it or not see it?
Right. And that doesn't mean that it's restricting your creativity, because you certainly can mark things to allow screen readers, or folks that are using screen readers, that they don't have to waste their time. And I'm not kidding when I say that people that use screen readers that are visually impaired, they can intake data and information so much quicker than a sighted person, because they know how to use the tools and they get through that stuff quickly. And so I've always been very cognizant about that skill that they have. I had a 100% blind student come into my class. I was teaching Microsoft Word back in the day, way back. And I got very nervous because I'm like, you know, how do I make accommodations for this? She had a note taker with her. And I asked her, I said, you know, what do I need to do to ensure that you are comfortable in the class? And she goes, all I need is you to install JAWS. And that's a screen reader. I can't remember what JAWS stands for right now, but it was a screen reader program that allowed her to navigate on the computer screen. And she used keystrokes and everything to to move around that screen. And so I found myself, you know, I would talk about this fast to make sure that she could follow. I only did that for about the first hour, and the note taker came up to me and she goes, you really don't have to do that. She will follow along. And I speak fast. I think that is something that's inherent in teachers. And I watched this woman navigate her way everywhere that I took those learners. And I tried to be very specific in, remember we talked about that before, being very direct and specific of telling people where to go. So I wouldn't say, you see that button up there on the left? I would be very specific. I said, choose the home tab on the ribbon and select blah, blah, blah. And she was there just as fast as anybody using a mouse. So don't underestimate your learners being able to navigate with the technologies that they've learned. You just need to make sure that as you plan and you work on these materials, that you are doing your best to ensure they have that equivalent experience. Because as I say on this slide here, don't worry about yesterday. Don't worry about what you created last week that you know isn't fully accessible. The next time you use that material, you might have to work on making sure that it's accessible, but at least you're showing good intent. Okay, and that's a big legal thing sometimes, of just showing good intent that you are trying to make sure that your materials are fully accessible. So I'm hoping that, I'm going to just go to the next slide here, that your tackle box is full, that you understand the why of accessibility, that you can follow POUR to help you with planning and getting your tools together, your design teams together. You find the tools for the how, and that's through Microsoft and the Accessibility Center and the training links that were provided in the previous slides, and they will all be there. And I know Anne-Marie is just got these resources at her fingertips as well, because now, work with other teachers that are willing to take on this mindset, that are willing to understand, yes, this is real important. So as we move forward, we can make sure that we meet these requirements. So we make sure that our learners have everything they need, no matter what their particular disability may be, and whether or not they declare it to us or not, we have done what we need to do to make sure that they have that equivalent experience. So when you make that plan, you follow that plan, share that plan, and you're going to show your good intentions to ensure that your learners have that equivalent experience, and make sure that everyone gets what they need to learn the materials that you've provided. The last slide on here that you can see on your own later just has a couple of other webinars. This is about really understanding about, I see I have a typo there, sorry, about the meaning of accessible and creating accessible documents and slide decks. Some of you may not like reading the documents that I provided, so these videos might provide another way of gaining that information. And I know we only have a few minutes, but I'm happy to try to answer any questions. I know that you have one of the best resources in Texas right in your back pocket through Anne-Marie and her knowledge of accessibility, and especially the law. The woman's certified. I hope you know, certified in accessibility, right? She knows her stuff. And I hope that you use her as a resource as well. But other than that, I'm going to quit, and we can talk, we can ask questions, or whatever the next steps may be.
So I'm just going to jump in here really quick and just let you all know, and I'm going to share my screen really quick, Penny.
Okay,
and
I'll stop.
While I do that, I want you guys to take this opportunity to post questions. Penny is very kind, but she is incredibly knowledgeable in this area as well. So I think we're both equally passionate about being ambassadors for people with disabilities and accessibility. So what we're going to do in following Penny's directions, I'm going to draw your attention up to the left-hand corner and the tab that says Connect Communities. I'm going to go down to where it says All Communities, and I'm going to click there. If you are not a member of the Tech and Tell community of practice, you need to come down to where it says Browse Communities and find it. Then click on it and hit join or follow. I believe it says follow or join. All right, I am already a member of the Tech and Tell community, and I'm going to scroll back up to the top, and it says My Communities. This means that I'm already following these communities, okay? I have pages and pages, so I'm going to scroll down a little bit. I apologize. And I'm going to go to, I think, the third tab. Yes. And I'm going to scroll up. And does everybody see where it says Tech and Tell Community of Practice? I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to go to the community. And I have these tabs up here, Main, Topics, and Members. I'm going to click on Topic, and I have created a new topic. And it should come up here. Okay.
Is it the Microsoft Accessibility Tech and Tell? It's the fourth one down on the left side.
And I went right past it. Okay, so does everybody see that? Thank you, Penny. It's right here. I probably changed the name. I don't know if I like the name, but that's irrelevant right now. So I'm going to click on that. And I have started and maybe it didn't save it. So it did not save. Wonderful. But I'm going to create a posting in here with a folder, and it's going to say Microsoft. There it is right there. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to load something really quick. I'm going to attach something. I'm going to select a file, and I'm going to go to where it says right here, Accessibility Resource List. And I got to move all this stuff out of the way. Open. And I'll go and I'll make it fancy for you all later, okay? But now it's here, and I'll put something here, and I'm going to hit done. That's what I didn't do. That's why I didn't save it.
For use.
Colleagues, please. Okay, so we're just going to put that here, and I'll fix it in a minute. Okay, done. Okay, so let's go back out, and if you look up here at the top, you can see that I have these breadcrumb trails up here, and Penny Pearson taught me this, and I never forgot it. She doesn't know that. So here's the Tech and Tell Community of Practice. I'm going to go back out there, and I'm going to go to Topics right here. Follow the breadcrumb trail, and you will never get lost. And now I'm in Topics, and I'm going to scroll down to the folder. A topic is a folder. Just remember that. I'm going to click on that. And I have a Q&A that I started right here, and I'm going to click on that. And here is your first resource that I've posted for you. But I will be posting other resources in there that Penny talked about today. So was that helpful for everybody? Is that helpful? I hope so.
Well, I appreciate this opportunity, Anne-Marie. First and foremost, I always love working with you and your team. And I hope that everyone was able to take away at least one little bit, and you are willing to try it the next time you go out to try to and create your next great whatever, whether it's a worksheet or it's a textbook or it's a slide deck presentation, because it all starts with just that first step. Let's go and find the resource, plan it, and put it together. And again, Anne-Marie, thank you for the invitation. Thank you everyone for your time today. And I appreciate it. And I hope I get to come back again in the future and we can do something else.
Yes, you can. And I want to say on behalf of Train PD, we appreciate you so much, Penny, for being with us and always sharing your expertise. Overall, California educators are so generous with us in supporting us in our endeavors, and we so appreciate their support. And I want to thank Krista Mosier for helping me today, and Ashley Winkle. And on behalf of all of us at Train PD, everyone on the call this morning as I roll through the list and this afternoon now, we thank you so much and we appreciate you.